Hi. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for joining us.
Give me a sign and I'll...
We are here to launch our very first part of the programme we're offering here at the wonderfully sunny
Amazing, thank you so much.
Wellington College. We are with the Future Foundation now, and sharing in this very first instance the mission of the Future Foundation.
Tell us what that vision is, the future of AI.
We'll ask you to introduce yourself. First, my name is Laura Knight, and I'm on the Advisory Council for the Good Future Foundation, and I'm delighted to be here talking about this venture and the big area at the moment with work in this space. Our mission is to narrow digital gaps and provide opportunity to everyone in schools and in education, thinking about how we use AI safely and responsibly. Really excited about if you can see
freebies to be had. We also have a course that in a minute.
Really excited.
So
Ali, tell us a little bit.
So come you on.
So I'm trying to think of a good voice. We are running something called AI Project.
No.
Well, all of us here, you definitely know.
So it's been away.
I started on a journey but without progress.
So oh gosh, so many people
have started. I think
what are the
don't know places from. So
send it outside the foundation and get them a cold drum.
So we know that the majority of teachers in the country are going to be at least sort of 5 or below, i.e. know loads about education. Where does this fit? And that's really what we'd like to help with.
Amazing. And tell me a little bit more about what that kind of help might do.
So we're trying to encourage schools to have a holistic approach. So to think about every aspect of their school, and particularly what is their vision, what is their purpose of their education, and then how does AI enter that, rather than starting with what can AI do. Out there, really going back to foundations.
Well, we have a student, he just anything AI computer, so the team here, your whole board for one sure.
And next time we're going to be piloting with our potential 100 schools across the country, so schools can sign up if they wish. And what will be part of that suite of materials is designing some resources for head teachers and governors and map leaders, so that it starts very much from a strategic perspective, and that'll be a framework of principles. So what do I do from that? All
should do it. You could win things. Hello. You will win things. Hello.
AI, and then very much moving into half-day training.
Oh yes, please. Yes,
where do I start? Grab a seat. And one of the key messages we're going to the schools
wow.
that I feel like they're behind. Because they're hearing your messages of the schools that do a fantastic job, and they think, oh, we're not doing that, so we need to speed up, or you don't need to get there. So our aim is to say, actually, you're in the majority. Actually, every school in the country hasn't got this sorted yet. So we're going to start from that perspective where we want to make people who are very fearful. There are many people who feel inadequate or overwhelmed, or they don't know where to start. So that's very much the message we're giving, which is that head teachers believe this is and that's what our evidence and the board shows. So we've got head teachers. We've then got some training materials for teachers that take you from, I don't know what AI is, in a very basic way through what they've had, what they've need to know. So really taking those through online speak learning. Then the final piece of the work is really about students, because we know from evidence that students are using this extensively, and yet 90% of students say they wish they had more support, and then people were helping them. And only 35% of teachers, students say they've had any help at secondary. So what we do is, in partnership with teachers, we are designing primary materials for students and secondary school. So from age sort of 8, 9, they can start having a conversation about what is AI, but more formally, what is true, what is false, how do I know, what's misinformation. How do I interpret the world? Because we spent millennia saying to children, everything you hear is true. And we need to flip that pretty much instantaneously too. You've got to assume that everything you see or hear is convinced. and how do you know? Those really fundamental philosophical questions, so that we avoid the horrific situations we've seen where one person's misinformation brings causes indeed. So we're really trying to say, let's bring to generation children not only AI use to have that broad picture.
And there's such an important aspect to that. See the media literacy, that critical thinking, that all in all is definitely should rightly sit up for the competitive science. Yeah, and that's some of the things that I think lots of schools
You prioritise
how do you make sure that people understand these messages and you should lead on it? So I think it's really exciting and inspirational for us doing this work. So thank you so much. I'm especially keen to see how we can continue to propose this ship and how we can ensure that there are plenty of ongoing lots of opportunities in this space to see that support not just be a tick box. Of course, we don't want that. We want schools to engage and to keep learning and growing with it, don't we? So I think that's really exciting. One of the ways in which the Good Future Foundation is looking to really work in that space as well is through our AMI quality work. And we will be talking a little bit later on the stand about that, which is fantastic, where we will be sharing. I hope you don't feel I've been mischaracterising this. I'm misrepresenting it when I say it's a bit like the Duke of Edinburgh Award, only for AI in schools.
Something in that space.
There's less camping and fewer sausages involved, but nonetheless, right? And if it does create a structure to support development, and really right from the beginning, which I think is so important. There's lots of barriers to entry with AI. Lots of folks who are scared to get started and not sure if they're going to get in trouble, what it might mean to them if they sign up for something or do something they shouldn't and they don't know. So that it's designed to help really nurture those kinds of early conversations and also build a real strategic direction and support that purposeful engagement with AI across the school, including with parents, with students and with staff. There's also some other exciting training opportunities which come through the Good Future Foundation, which all three of the schools, which is I think again fantastic to really look into. Again, lower the bar of entry. It's really difficult to create time busy CPD inset programs, we know, and it's so important. We don't expect everyone to point into London every time that they want to engage with something. So Good Future Foundation works really hard on taking that mission to the regions and making sure that we are trying to reduce travel time for colleagues as well. And then finally, there's another exciting thing that we're going to be sharing during this festival, which I think we're really proud of, is that we created a brand new sandbox. I just showed Ali and she was excited too. We created a sandbox which is kind of a playful space that's designed for teachers to engage perhaps for the first time with generative AI and understand what it can do. The aim being that you can do that and play with it and understand capability without having to sign up for anything, without having to pay for anything, and it doesn't collect any data whatsoever or contribute to any training in any sense whatsoever. So you can be really reassured that you're doing something safe in an environment that's designed for. So really encourage folks to have a little look at that. We've got some of their classes over that as we go and play with it too. But I certainly think that will help colleagues with those early discovery pieces in a way that feels precise.
And it's fantastic because where we're working in partnership, we're bringing all of that together. So the idea is if you're a school, you can get everything in one place super easily. You can work through the quality marks, you can have the framework principles layer on it, you can then do the teacher training, you can do the pupil curriculum. So it takes you from a position of, I don't know where to start, over a period of time it feels real and it works for your school, to a position where you're in a much safer and more strategically sound place. So it's so exciting to be exploring this in a way that's countering the trend in a way. It's not for profit, it's not got any tech background to it, it's got an educated background, and I think that's really important.
It is so important because I think teachers are rightly a little wary around being sold something that seems new and shiny and cool that we are not necessarily clear on purpose. And also we want to be able to look at our existing curriculum and our materials and our children and really think about how we can do our best for them rather than trying to shoehorn something extra in where we're not even necessarily sure on the UG. So I think it's a really positive thing to start with this educator learning.
Fantastic, and certainly it's been interesting. It's one of the pieces of evidence with commercial companies that have been working with AI maybe for the last sort of 2 to 5 years in some cases, is that within a couple of years, if people are using AI for a particular task, the staff who are using it are then de-skilled to do that task. So one of the key messages we want to have, conversations we want to have with the sector countrywide is really, which bits of education do we want to keep and how are we going to do that? So we're not just automating processes that are actually fundamental to the process of teaching and learning. So just if we can do something, we need to have those broader discussions about where it fits into the why.
There is something so important about this. One of the conversations we often can have is about how low-hanging fruit seems to be, well, how can you save time? And I'm not always sure that that's that helpful a conversation, because the time that one might save, for example, as an early creative, versus the time that one might say 20 years in, it might feel very different. And some of those processes might be arduous but necessary for professional knowledge and understanding and skill. So I think you're absolutely right. This question around de-skilling is really key, and for us to think with purpose and care about if we want to make something and then we see skill as a substance, and to really reflect on it. We know that we might really find some bits of our job with drivers bananas, and that's okay. A lot of people come to me and say, can I get AI to write my report? It's one of the first things people often ask. Yeah, all right. Reply when people ask you this question.
So really fascinating when I think stepping back what's the purpose of reports? What would you like? What do you gain by writing them? What would you code gain?
I'll have a QR code take that a while to know.
There is about what that if we fast forward 5 years and all of us talk something either by AI or in partnership with that. So that's better question in partnership, because the concept of voicing things in AI is just not really one that
Is there a good place for me to put my bag?
control it and really decide what we'd like to do.
Just down here?
I think AI
I don't have a banner, I don't know.
it's take a while to
And you find the media there, they come across and let me get
elements where the first few years feel great and then they suddenly realise there's side effects or terrible things that can do that. So what we're trying to do is get some of these conversations and see what people see.
And I think that's so important. One of the things I'm fascinated, particularly when we talk to some of these other is actually where is the bar that move? If we idolise a human as always being that's for nice. So if they do this, the amount of being a big stuff, their mindset is already happening. The amount of bland statements that don't mean a great deal, or people are a little bit biased, if we're honest. And are there ways actually for us to use AI ethically to raise communication, to be more consistent, to maybe meet individual needs and can we do that with purpose rather than just kind of blindly saying, oh well, we don't have to worry about it.
And you're right, because I mean statement banks, for example, where people choose their statements have been around in education for 20-30 years. So again, it's a mixed approach in that sense. It's just a different way of reflecting things, but it's that thinking about really it's been interesting because again there's a lot of conversation around what we talk about when we mean it. It's a term which is banned around, and therefore people think whichever AI I'm using, or generally AI is going to be the same. And we're encouraging people to really explore a bit more about that as to what it is you're being offered, because it's a bit like a tablet. You know, just because it's white and round, and someone's going, this is great, doesn't mean you know anything about it. So that integrity about who's providing to you those questions around what is happening to your data. If you're putting your report data into something,
Indeed,
depends on what you're
that data literacy question is one that I'm particularly interested in supporting with colleagues in schools, especially, and helping folks understand that in most cases people will not make poor decisions. Teachers will not make poor decisions maliciously. Yes, but there will be poor decisions made naively if you're about, well, I want to find a way to do this, and if I copy and paste this here, without necessarily understanding what happens if you actually have a free account and you're essentially contributing to training data without any understanding of where it's going to go. And particularly if you're not sure on where the tool is posted that you are evaluating. There was a lot of news recently around DeepSeek, for example, and I think we should be asking questions around, okay, so if I'm choosing to use a tool that is situated in a different geography, what does that mean for my information and where it is? So effectively, you can just use that data literacy and some real respect for privacy. We've got some really conversations about some of that data and privacy stuff coming up later in the press. But it's certainly one of the pieces I think is foundational to this.
And I think also the concept of AI, the answer being given, is one that we really need to tackle at a very early stage, because already people are looking at it going, that's the answer. And that's such a fundamental thing, and it reminds me very much of my early days of maths teaching, where just and they type in 4 plus 4 and somehow make a mistake and come up with 1,000, and they write 1,000 on the piece of paper. And we go, well, you need to have this concept, you need to have this process. And I think AI is a bit like that, where you may look at something and it says, oh, this is case. And you go on your way based on that answer. It's really about the intelligence of, do we need to use it for that question? That's already. How do we authenticate? So I think that's a really important thing, because whatever we use it for, we've got to understand which may or may not be correct.
Absolutely, and so being able to look at things with a critical lens and also understand the fallibility of it, and so where it has its strengths and where it has its weaknesses, and where it actually needs to be careful about choosing the right tool for the drawer. There are lots of tools which make strengths in certain areas, weaknesses in others, and there are also other tools which layer things together. For example, there's a lot of conversation about space at the moment, based on the tech behind it, and that means adding additional capability on top of the large language model. That might include apps, for example, or something to do with nature, science, or indeed specific guardrails for certain situation. Most videos, how do you then must come beyond just the simple
In my sense,
interface and personal things.
Yeah. So I'm gonna try and think around that right now.
No, I think that's very much it. The other particularly important space is the need for teachers, head teachers and students to understand what the future of work is. Now there's loads of conversations around the future of work in the future world, and a lot of it's around excellent jobs and all that, but I'm not thinking about that too. What I'm thinking about is the overwhelming evidence. It says the top things that people are going to be able to do is think critically, solve problems, be creative, relate to our human day. And I think that's a really important message we've got to get across. So I think the perspective of school in the school and secondary environment, education environment, somehow you've got to prepare students to be more technical, for sure. When actually the message is you've got to use that. Like you've got to be able to hold those realizations. So I think it's a really critical message, because I don't think that got into the education sector too. I totally agree, and I think there's some very interesting conversations that are happening there. Right from early as how they about some very earliest forms of digital literacy, but also foundational character ethical decisions. What are the things that you do when everyone is looking? So you think that no one is looking. That integrity question around the sort of autonomy that you have when perhaps you're not being seen exactly, because no one can see your process and the outcome, and you're what does that mean? What are the consequences? Can you get away with it? There's lots of folks worried about if I game it or if I cheat, what does that look like? I hope that we can build a better language around understanding partnership with,
and then please do spin
in a way that can help people make a decision as well as I better have practice. But also that we understand sometimes you just have to do the work. Now, there are lots of good conversations about culture. There's also good conversations about what actually is the law. And what it means to do the work becomes a new intellectual struggle. It becomes a new question about creativity, like you mentioned earlier. There's such an interesting space around uncertainty here. AI, in large language models, as they currently are, will by default feed you wonderful certainty, often not grounded in fact, but wonderful certainty. So are there ways for us to explore more divergence before we converge? Are there ways to build in different approaches to questioning and coaching styles? Yes, there absolutely are, but they don't come by default. So
no, and I think I heard a Brown quote the other day which was about that message, because again people are talking about cheating or not cheating, and that seems to be the headline, but in a way it is much more out that way. You're getting the processing. Someone said we don't ask students to write essays because we need them. You thought, what a wonderful quote. We ask them to write it because they learn how to research, they learn how to think, they learn how to frame everything together. And what do you lose if all of a sudden white button in for you? So it's about how do we retain those thought processes, how do we have that struggle? Because so much you learn is struggling against. And if you can press the button and it does it for you, then you don't have the struggle, you don't have the learning process, and therefore your brain isn't done.
Absolutely. Something so key about this about was a paradox I think is worth mentioning. We've been found through the sort of social media and smartphone era to look to technology to soothe our desire. So whenever we're bored or lonely or overly stimulated, we seek comfort through technology, through our phone. You only have to look up the waiting in line for something and notice how many of them instantly reach for the philosophy. In this instance, it almost could then counterculture to say to youngsters, don't sit with that thing, because and it's going to take a certain sort of resilience to be able to handle that. So I do think it's so massively allows that iteration and that messy process before you get to the outcome. Process and outcome are another interesting area. We've got just 5 minutes left in the end of this session. I'm just wondering if those of you with headsets, you're very welcome to you can talk into it if you press the little button, and so everybody can hear. If you have a question for me or Ali, otherwise we'll keep chatting and you can just. Is there anything you would like to ask about some of the things we've been chatting?
In schools we use research quite a lot. So I'm a science teacher, so the other teaching research and doing PowerPoint presentations and stuff. A lot of the students will say, "Can I use AI?" And I say, "No, you're not allowed to use AI." But they will find a way to still use AI. How can we control it in the school? Because AI is very new and it's very enticing, like you mentioned. How do we limit without taking away their sort of, their right to use it?
Sure. So there's a couple of things that are really interesting. The first one, from a governance perspective, is to start with policy. And it's not very glamorous, but it's really, what does the school policy say about the use of AI? And I'm hoping that it probably says, use it when you're allowed to, when you have permission to. Use it in these safe situations and not those unsafe ways, that kind of thing, right? Then the teacher needs to have a level of control and autonomy about the way they design us, obviously, and to be able to say to students, this is, there are lots of different models for this. Some people use flags or traffic lights, that kind of thing. They can say absolutely no, or only in this way, or yes with freedom as long as you use these particular tools. And so I would start thinking about how you design classes to capture that kind of framework as a good starting point, and then model good practice so that you can demonstrate to students what you consider to be good work. So it might be, for example, you take a staged approach. You say, right folks, now I have the first 20 minutes. I want to see your work. Then I want you to use these three prompts to sense check what you've done, and look critically at your own thinking. Or indeed provide them models that help them see different ways of prompting for different starting points. That I would try and make it as transparent as possible, so you're not creating an opposition force. No. That would be my first instinct. And then you'll notice the first thing I didn't say was block it and ban it and put it in the bin if it goes away. Because the moment that you start doing that, it all goes beneath the race, and you get a little game of cat and mouse. And I would say that is the most problematic. It's exactly the same as banning phones and finding them all in the locker at lunchtime. It's the same thing. No. So let's instead look at how we teach them to use it well, how we contain it in ways that is appropriate for the task we have, and we really prioritise their thinking.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I think the same applies to teachers. One of the first things we want to do is for schools to have open conversations with all their staff about how do you feel about it, because there'll be teachers who are afraid, there'll be teachers who won't want it used. We've had in our research from teacher directly, we should be taught, so you need to have that conversation, because otherwise people do go underground, but also about what do we want as a school and who's already using it, because the evidence is that although most teachers say they don't understand it, the majority of teachers are using it, which is a worrying parallel. And I think it's really important that we don't make it so it's kind of a banned thing, whereby then people are using it, but that it's not open.
So we don't want the hypocrisy of a teacher very clearly and demonstrably using AI well in their education and being told off by it.
No.
But we also don't want the students to feel like, well, hang on, that's not fair, and so you've done this and you told us about it. We also don't want children walking into the next teacher's class and saying, oh, but sir, let us do it this way, because that's not helpful either.
No.
So there needs to be some unity and clarity of thinking about it at a school level, which requires a little courage, because it is uncomfortable, especially given how different the views are. So actually, some open conversations, I think.
And there's a question. And just to say, 90% of secondary students are using AI.
Yeah.
So in that sense, saying, well, we're not going to use it in our school, or like that kind of approach is just not going to work. Because all they're going to do is go and use it very badly outside.
Yeah.
So it,
And unless you want your homework done by Saturday.
It's a strange comparison, but it's like sex education.
Yes.
If you're not exposed to it in a healthy way, in a classroom setting, taught by professionals, bearing in mind, then they're going to try and look for it somewhere else.
And where will they look? In the places we would probably least want them to.
100%. So, no, like you were mentioning before, like there should be government policy. There should be from the headship down, where we have CPD on it, how to use it in a healthy way, and how can we teach our children to teach themselves.
There is so much scope here between the Good Future Foundation and the Big AI Project for us to big education. I don't want the words in the text.
the big AI project.
The Big AI Project.
Yeah.
There is so much scope for support for your school. So do sign up on one of the iPads.
Yeah.
And folks, we'd love to engage with you. We have this wonderful community we're launching today from colleagues of today.
And if people want to sign up with the Big AI project, all you do is Google the Big AI project and sign up. And we're doing quite an experiment to get all the free tutorials and things.
Oh, yeah. So download in. You don't have to pay anything.
It's free fun.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. Do keep in touch.
How do you know?